Welcome to the House of Fi. At the House of Fi, we inspire and encourage families of all shapes and demographics to achieve financial independence. Here, we teach you to become debt-free, build wealth, and increase your income. We also share inspiring stories of others on the road to Fi, others who have made it to Fi, as well as some of our own perspective about this journey. If you're a family on the road to financial independence, we want you to know that financial independence is for everyone. We're glad you're here. Welcome back, House of Fi family. And if you are new here, welcome to our house. We are glad to have you. I am Wendy, and across the table from me is my better half, Curtis. Hey, babe. So we're on day 2 of summer break. Do you remember what you said last night?
Yeah, I think it was the point is I hate summers.
You said you were bored already.
Yeah, and yeah, that's the first part of it. But you already told me that I have my honeydew list that I have to do. So
well, and I have those big 3x3 foot Post-its. I'm thinking maybe I'll put some up all over the house for you. How about that?
Yeah, because we have less than 45 days to get everything taken care of.
6 weeks to get this house ready. So.
Yeah. It's going to be crazy.
Well, I had a great week so far.
You did. I know we had family in for Mike's graduation. That was awesome. And, everybody's gone. Now we got to think about activities for the boys.
Yeah.
Even though we have the park right across the street, they're still in and out wanting food.
It's really, really hot. Yesterday, it was almost 90 degrees.
Yeah.
It's really humid, too. It's gross.
Oh, we got to take them to the pool.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. The pool or the beach. So we have a super awesome guest today, and she's one of my favorite people. She's a total go-getter, and she's in one of the mastermind groups that I have the privilege to be part of. I'm constantly motivated by her drive and determination, but more than that is her willingness to help others and share information, in particularly military families. She is a mom, a veteran, a military wife, or a Milspouse, as she calls that. I've never heard that before, but
it's the first time I've heard that too.
But she's an expert of all things military and money. Lacey, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Lacey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be chatting with you both.
We are too. I think this is going to be a really good conversation. We live in a military community. We have lots of friends and neighbors, and our kids' schoolmates, they're all military. And so I think whatever we can do, and especially in like a high cost of living city like San Diego, I think any tips that we can give our friends and neighbors about, the benefits of being in the military and some of the things that they can do to set themselves up in a good situation is awesome. So we're excited to talk to you today. Let me ask you this. I'm just going to come right out of the gate and ask you a question about what are one of the more common money mistakes that young people are making with respect to money when they are entering the military?
Overspending, by far. It gets very tempting when you come in the military and you're making good money. I know a lot of people like to say that sometimes military aren't paid well. There's different ways of looking at that, but on the whole, they're earning a consistent paycheck and good money for their age and their education. And so getting that money coming in every month can get tempting to increase their quality of life when they don't necessarily need to, and they're trying to keep up with people. So I really feel like overspending, and that also plays into deployments. Mm-hmm. So that is something where a lot of the military community are going to the Middle East or other areas of the world where there's hazardous duty, hostile fire, those type of things, which the government compensates service members for. So they get an extra bit of money for being there. They're usually tax-free. And then if they're married, they're also receiving what they call separation pay, which is additional money. So when you do a deployment, there's this influx of money, which is great. But when they come back from that deployment, often service members continue spending like they're getting paid for that deployment. So that overspending then now starts to put them in debt. And when you have a pattern of deployments, which it's slowed down a little bit, the operations tempo for the different services. But if you're deploying every other year or every 6 months, then there's this mentality in the military community to say, okay, hey, I know we're going a little bit over and we're going into debt, but we're going to deploy again. So then we'll get right. And so they do a deployment and then pay off some debt or all of their debt during that deployment. And when they come back, they continue that behavior. And so families just kind of get in this cycle. And then when they separate from the military, that's a huge problem because they don't have that big security blanket to get out of debt.
That's kind of that lifestyle creep for everybody that, when you get raises, you increase your spending to go with that. But that's a really interesting point for military in particular, that it kind of is this ebb and flow. And that I can see is compounding really quickly.
And especially for young people that are going in that have no type of money experience.
Often, too, they are the highest income earner, not only for their immediate family, but their extended family. And so often service members are bailing out family members. And so they're taking care of two households, which can get exhausting and then cause other financial problems. So it's this overspending, keeping up with other people, and just not being present with their money, I think is a real big problem, because I preach this all the time to people that I coach, is that right now in your income earning years, you are actually earning money for two people, for yourself and for your 80-year-old self. Right. And if you are not spending less than you make and saving, you are not covering the rent or the quality of life for your 80-year-old self. So I think it's really important for them to realize you can't spend every dime you have. You definitely can't spend more than you have, because you need to be able to cover yourself in the future. And I really drive that in, because that shows them that this, hey, is money that is already kind of spent, and I need to put it away. I need to put it into savings for the things I want. I also need to put money into the thrift savings account, which is the equivalent of a 401k for the military, to have that money, growing and earning for their retirement years.
So let's go back just a little bit, because you did mention the coaching. And so I know as part of your story, one of the ways that you began coaching is volunteering. And I love this part in your bio where you talk about that you loved volunteering in that capacity and trying to win over the hostile soldier who had been ordered to get financial counseling. Why would that happen? And what leads to that situation? And what are some of the first things that you do to help a soldier in that situation?
Well, there could be a few reasons why they're ordered. So one is just general. That is something they're taught when they come in. There are basic financial classes for everyone in the military. So if they want it, there is financial help for them. So that could be, they're getting like a little bit of training on budgeting, what the thrift savings plan is, how to use that. But often they're told they have to come to this class. So they're not completely hostile, but they're voluntold that they're going to be doing this. When you're in the military, you're held to a higher standard. Even some of these younger folk are 17 years old when they join the military. They're signed in by their parents, and often they might have a very young spouse, could be 16. Their spouse could still be in high school.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of learning there. When you bring them into the service, you give them a very important job, and they're getting paid well for that. But the other side of that is that they could have a security clearance to hold their job. So that means that you have to have a certain level of secrecy in the job that you do. You can't share that with people, and there's different levels of that. So especially like the Air Force and the Navy, often you're required to have a security clearance of secret to even join. So you have to be able to pass the background check. And part of that background check is your finances. Because if you are in a lot of debt, if you have debt and collections, you are a security risk to national defense, because you could be tempted by somebody to say, hey, if you could just take a picture of your workspace and give it to me, I'll give you 10 grand. Well, that's a problem, because if you are in $100,000 worth of debt, it could be real tempting to be like, hey, what's one picture going to hurt?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the finance ordering comes in. Often when service members have had their security clearance suspended or revoked because of their finances, they are told you have to get financial help. And it's extensive. You have to kind of get a plan. You have to go through your credit report, make a plan to get out of debt, really have a full understanding of your finances with a financial professional. And often they come in there and they're frustrated. They don't understand kind of the bigger picture and what healthy practices are with money. And that's kind of often I see is why they've gotten into that position is because they don't understand these healthy practices. It's not necessarily a healthy norm because I feel like everybody's normal is different. But when you are raised in an environment, if you weren't around somebody that's teaching you those healthy practices with money, you're going to have some habits that might not be good for the greater good of your finances. And so it's teaching them, and that's kind of where the part where I really want them to understand, hey, like, I'm not judging you about your money. You've worked very hard for everything that you have. I'm just going to help you be better with it or to develop those healthy practices so that, your career doesn't get hurt by that. Because if you lose your security clearance in the military, you can no longer hold that job. And unless you are able to get retrained into another job that does not require security clearance, you could be potentially put out of the military. And that is going to make your financial problems so much worse. Right. So I don't necessarily enjoy people having financial problems, but it's rewarding to help people work through those and to teach them, hey, you can do this on your own. It's just getting a new skill set.
I never knew that.
Yeah. Fun facts about the military and money.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's important to know because I think our oldest son, Michael, is 17, and we have gone and talked to recruiters, and joining is still on his list of options. And so, in that whole process of, talking about joining and all the benefits of joining, they're not talking about like the risks and the dangers and the responsibility and that sort of thing. And so I think that sort of financial education is so, so important to these young people. And Mike's, fairly fortunate that we have been drilling into him, like, save 50%. But other young people don't have that benefit sometimes. And so
Oh, no. Yeah.
No, not at all. They have no experience, and they go in. I mean, I don't know how the process works for right when you get in and you're going through the training. Is their money set up in an account, or do they have to do it on their own if they're just this 17-year-old kid coming out, getting into the military? Is their money deposited into their account waiting for them when they get home? How does that work?
Well, the day you join, you have to have direct deposit set up. So that's how everybody in the Department of Defense is paid through direct deposit. I mean, I'm sure there's some one-offs, but on the whole, when you join, you have to have a bank account where the money can be deposited. And the military, the Department of Defense has recently changed the retirement system for service members. So after 20 years, you still receive a pension. It's just now at a reduced rate. And what they've done is now they put money into your TSP for you and they'll match it. Before, you had the option of serving 20 years honorably and then you would receive a pension, but you could also give money to the TSP each month. They have a system called MyPay, and you can set up what they call allotments or automatic transfers, direct deposits for savings. But for your TSP, they'll do that right from your payroll and move the money into your TSP account. But they were not matching that money. Now, for every service member that comes in, they automatically set that up for them. And it goes into, they call them life cycle funds or a target date fund automatically for them. Then they can adjust it as they see fit. But that's the beautiful thing now, is that you're 18 or 17 and the DoD is now putting money for your retirement away and account for you for your future with a match. If you choose to give money yourself, they're going to give 1% no matter what. And they're going to give you up to 5% in the match.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, that is.
Is that based upon like years of service? What is that percentage based on?
No, that's just for everybody in, because that was the problem, is that out of all the people that have served, 85% of people that left the service left with no retirement.
Wow.
Which was
horrible.
Right, horrible. Which was a problem. They did have the option to save in the TSP, but unfortunately some people weren't taking that option. So now the goal is to, even if you only serve 4 years or 6 years or 10 years, that you'll still have money in your thrift savings account to roll over or take with you when you go to a civilian job. So they're making great strides to improve the retirement. And two, if you serve 20 years, you're still going to get that pension. Now you also have the TSP with a match in there. So they're doing great things for young service members that are coming in to kind of set them up financially in the future for their retirement.
So let's say you have a young person who comes to you, maybe they're, late teens, early 20s, they're coming to you voluntarily. What are the first few things that you would suggest for them to do?
Is to I call it like a financial layout in the military. Whenever you go on a trip or a school, something like that, they always give you a packing list and you have to do a layout. They want to make sure that you have everything that you're supposed to. So I think for young service members, it's important for them to do a financial layout to understand exactly how much money you have coming in with all of your, they call them subsistence. So they call it BAH, or basic allowance for housing, basic allowance for subsistence, which is food. They give that to the service member. Understand when you deploy how much, if you're going to be paying in taxes, what all extra money you'll be receiving. So have a full accounting of what's coming in, and then have a full accounting of what is going out. And I know that may sound like a simple thing, but with money, for me, keeping it simple is the best way to go. And often people don't understand what is going on in their own financial life. So that financial layout, understanding what you have coming in, what you have going out, is the basic foundation of your financial success. To say, hey, I have, my car payment, I have insurance, I have food, I have my spending money. And then you can make adjustments if you're overspending. And it also helps them understand where everything is going. To say, hey, I spent way too much money at a bar this weekend. Or if I do that, then I'm not going to be able to go on this trip when I go on leave after my deployment or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I teach young service members, again, going back to, you've worked very hard for your money. You should have the quality of life that you want. It's just, you have to understand your money and have some boundaries. You can't have a blank check for everything. So, a lot of times I do talk a lot about entertainment budgets, because you're 21, you want to go out and have drinks. You've been in the Middle East for a year. So you do want to experience a normal life when you get home. So yes, by all means do that. But again, you can't have a blank check. So understanding how much your budget is for a Friday night, and to understand that you may not have money to go out every night of the weekend all month long, right. To say, hey, I'm going to go out, every Friday or Saturday night. I'll just go out on Saturdays, or I'll go out every other Saturday. So you have to kind of figure out what you have going on. And then the biggest thing too is, you have to save your money. You have to spend less than you make, and you have to save it. You have to save for the things you want, and you have to save for that 80-year-old self of yours. Those are kind of my two big things that I really drill into them. And the other one too is keeping up with other people. That is so frustrating to me. Like, oh, well, I have an $800 iPhone. Well, you couldn't afford an $800 iPhone. Yeah. Well, everybody has one. Well, that doesn't mean that you need one.
Right.
A flip phone works, and you have more money. Yeah.
Lacey, a flip phone.
Or a pager.
But it's like,
you're not going to sell anybody on a flip phone.
Maybe my grandma. But it's just like, you have to know what you're willing to give and take. So some people they're homebodies. They don't want to go out every Friday night. They'd rather just get pizza or something like that. So it's really knowing who you are and what you value and want to spend your money on, but keeping those basic components in place of knowing your money situation and saving that money is really important. And just being aware things change, and you have to be willing to adapt and kind of overcome the situation.
You're giving a lot of information that I didn't know about, because I teach and I get a lot of students that are getting ready to go into the military, and I'm giving them little tidbits about how to save their money, but most of them don't know the full aspects once they get in, what to do with their money, who to talk to, because all they know is that, most of the kids that are going in, they have nice cars, they're still living at home, and yet they don't have any type of money in their savings account. And so, any information that I can give them moving forward is awesome.
Well, and they're probably, once they get those first couple of checks, that's probably more money they've ever seen in their whole lives, ever.
Yes.
And it can be just very tempting to go out there and just go wild.
Well, yes, that is the best word to describe it. The temptation as a young service member is real. First of all, I just want to say, Curtis, that cars are kryptonite for young service members. That is one of the biggest financial mistakes I see them making time and time again, is buying a car, getting a horrible interest rate, buying it at a horrible time, buying a car right when they're getting ready to deploy because I have all this extra money. Well, you can't make that car payment now that the deployment is done. And so it's really understanding that wants versus needs. Like, hey, you may need a car, but it doesn't need to be a Dodge Charger.
Yes.
Like there's also some stereotypical vehicles that military people get: Dodge Charger and a jacked up truck.
Oh, I see Mercedes.
BMWs is
yes.
Yes. So, and this is a common mistake. They will get a vehicle with money that's not cemented. So for example, if you are in the Army and you are required to be jump qualified, so you jump out of an airplane, you're airborne. If you are airborne qualified on jump status, you receive extra money each month for that. And so a lot of times service members will go and get a new car because they're getting an extra $250 a month. And now they need that jump pay in order to make that car payment. Well, if you break your leg when you're jumping out of an airplane and you go off jump status, now you're not able to make your car payment. And that's where they start to get in trouble. Along with the deployment money, it's like you've made, or the Navy, if you're dependent on dive pay, then and you can't dive because you have an inner ear problem. Well, now you can't make your car payment because you don't get the dive pay. And then they start to get into financial trouble. So yes, cars are kryptonite. And if you think about it, the travel, like you get to go to some amazing places in the military. You know, you get to go to some of resorts on coast, and that's wonderful. It's an amazing experience. But it can get tempting to overspend there. And I think one thing that people often forget about is saving money is not just for problems. Saving money is for opportunities. For you to be able to say, hey, oh my goodness, I'm getting ready to go like on this amazing scuba diving trip in the Adriatic Sea because I'm deployed here right now. If I didn't have the money to pay for that trip, I would have missed a major opportunity because the military paid for me to get here. All I had to do was pay for the scuba trip. Right. So opportunities can pop up. And if you don't have money in your savings account, you could be tempted to put it on a credit card, or you might just miss out altogether if your credit card's maxed out. So I think it's important to keep that in perspective about, you know, your savings is not just for crisis, it's for good things too.
Do you think any of your advice changes for maybe people who are farther along in their military career and maybe have families and have maybe been overspending and not utilizing some of the benefits that they have to their capacity?
Yes. I think those trends roll right into married life, and then having children is that overspending, and then it just creates a lot of debt. So unfortunately, that's what I see with people is debt. And it's because opportunities came up or situations in the military. So often if you have orders and your financial life is dependent on the military spouse, or Milspouse is our lingo short for it. If you are both working and the military service member gets orders to move, if your bills are dependent on that second income, then you have a problem, because now the military spouse has to find a new job immediately, which is often difficult, especially if they have a specialty. So that's where if your car payment is dependent on that second income, then you have a problem. Or if it's being able to make your debt payments is dependent on that second income, then you have a problem. And so it's either the military spouse is going to be unemployed, or it can mean the military spouse has to stay behind and keep that job. And now you run into the problem of you're going to start running two households. Right. And so debt really sometimes overextends people and makes it so there's no room for them to pivot. And that's kind of the thing I really see with military families, military couples, is that debt kind of maxes them out, and they don't have room. They don't have freedom to be able to say, okay, hey, right now we have orders. We're going to be moving. I'm going to have to quit my job. I'm definitely going to be looking for one, but our livelihood isn't dependent on my income. So I often recommend is that the military spouse's income is for quality of life and increasing savings versus the basics of your life. So, you know, your house payment, car payments, food shouldn't necessarily be dependent on the military spouse's income, because you could definitely lose that.
To backtrack a little bit, I do want to talk about your background, kind of your experience growing up and where you learned some of your money lessons. Where do you consider your money story beginning?
I think it started very early. I have a first money memory, my first money memory, but also it was my first savings goal. So my dad was in the military, so I grew up an Army brat. And we were stationed in Germany, and I saw in the Sears catalog a pair of, I know it's ironic, white lacy gloves. And, yes. And I wanted them so badly to go with my Easter dress. And my parents told me that I could use some of my birthday money. And if I paid for half of it, I believe it was half, they would pay for the other half. So that was kind of my first savings goal. And I remember how rewarding that was, that I worked hard. That was money I got for my birthday. Obviously I wasn't working. I think it was 6. But it was very rewarding to me to have that, to show for that I worked hard for it. And I made some sacrifices. I didn't go spend it on candy. And, so I think I really learned at an early age, like my parents were very clear to me that you have to have some skin in the game when it comes to money. Mm-hmm. So things I wanted, there was always basics that they paid for. Obviously my parents took care of me, but if I wanted like designer jeans in junior high or high school, I had to pay the upcharge for that. Mm-hmm. They would pay for basic jeans, but if I wanted something special, I was going to have to do that. Same thing. If I wanted like fancy makeup, my parents, actually, I think I had to pay for makeup at all. Like I had to pay for it all. They weren't going to pay for anything. So I understood that at a very early age and I enjoyed working. And so I was always taught to manage my money and to spend less than I make, but I wasn't necessarily taught how to invest my money. And so I went into the military. I really wanted to work and I knew I wanted to go to school eventually, but I really enjoyed getting a paycheck. I always was like that. I started working, I think when I was 14, bagging groceries at the commissary, which is the military grocery store. Yeah. And then I started bussing tables and waiting tables. And then, I worked at like Bath and Body Works, Limited. Like I was always doing something. And
I'm a Limited girl too.
Oh, really? Yes. Yes. I have to tell you this. I had a killer wardrobe because of the discount.
Yes.
And I worked at the Limited when I joined the military. And so I went to basic training, went to my tech school and started my life in the military and came home and my sisters had totally robbed my closet.
Oh no.
Yes. But the funny thing is they didn't mention it. I would just like go somewhere and I would see them in my outfit.
They're taking a little bit at a time each time you're gone.
Yes. Yes. So, but when I joined the military, that was something that my dad was trying to, tell me, hey, it gets tempting. You gotta, put some money away. So I always put away $50 starting, when I was 19 years old. Like I just kind of got in that habit. But then I was like, what do I do with it? Like I've been doing the right things. I did what you said, Dad. Like I spent less than I made. I put it away. But now what do I do with it? And so that's where kind of my interest in investing started. And I started back to school when I was on active duty. And then once I separated, I transferred to a major university and got my undergraduate degree in business and finance. And then it kind of snowballed from there. And then I have all of the requirements to become a certified financial planner. If I ever pass the exam, I will be one. So that I had a good foundation, but I wanted to learn how to take my money to the next level, not only for myself, but for my family and for my children.
So let's talk about, you're married and your husband, he just retired from the military. Is that right?
It was like 2.5, 3 years ago.
Okay. And so were you both kind of on the same page about finances, or was that something that grew? Or, let's talk about that. So marriage and finances, how has that evolved?
I will say that I'm very blessed that we've always been on the same page. My husband and I mean, we were that way before when we were dating. Our goals were always very important to us, that we were both going to school, we're getting our education. I remember we would study together. We had no cable. We didn't have a lot of money to go out. So that's kind of what we did. We sucked it up and sacrificed for the things that we wanted. So I think we started that even before we were married. Mm-hmm. From day one, we've had a clear layout of what was important to spend money on. So for us, education and health was always something that I could go over budget on. That's where we would put money. Like if I want to go into the CFP program, we're going to put our money towards that. We're going to sacrifice and make that happen because that's for the greater good as far as we're concerned with education. Obviously that I can make money with, but, and same thing with health. Like if I want to go like to a CrossFit class or I want to go to a kickboxing class, that's kind of something that we we kind of have wiggle room on, but we've always saved. We tried to live off of one income, which is very helpful in the military life. I definitely practice what I preach. Yeah. And that really helped us with things, with our transition out of the military. That was huge. If we didn't have the kind of savings that we did, we would have had big problems, because it was, my husband did a job for a little while that he didn't like, that wasn't a good fit. And then we moved, and he was trying to find work for like 9 months. And that was a big hit for us, because that was right when I was kind of really taking off doing my own business, and we had to take some side steps. But yes, we've always really tried to have that second income as quality of life.
I really like that. And we've never had that. We've always been dependent on two incomes. And for the large part of our careers, I was the breadwinner. And so in October of last year, I retired my practice. And now Curtis is the primary breadwinner, and we still rely on me to bring in just a little bit of income. But after we sell the house, we will be able to live on just his income, which is huge. And I think from there, that's when things are really going to start transitioning for us, where everything that I bring into the household, or everything that we can make in like real estate investment income, all of that's going to be gravy. And to know that we can supply our basic needs on just his income is going to be life-changing. And if you can start out that way, like, that's amazing.
It really is. It gives you so much freedom and room to move to, like, because life is going to happen. It's just a question of when and how much. So that's a given. Like, your car breaking down is not a surprise. Like, at some point a car is going to break down. At some point you're going to need new tires. And if you're already maxed out with the regular stuff, like your car payment and debt payments, those type of things, food, house, then when little stuff comes up that should be put into your budget each month, it's devastating to people. Right. And it's just not necessary. Right. You have to kind of make those sacrifices in the areas that you're willing to. Like, we're always willing to give up our TV. Like, real quick, that's the first thing to go in our family. Like, if we have a financial goal, it's like, let's get rid of that real quick. We don't need that. And we are not big on going out to eat. So we know where to find money in our budget. That's where it's going to be at. We'd rather stay home and cook it ourselves. And I'm not saying I'm having like rice and, tuna all the time, like we'll cook steak at home, things like that. But we know ourselves. And I think that's so important when it comes to your financial life, is to not only know yourself, but to know how that works as a couple. I think is very important. I understand what my husband's values. Sometimes I don't. Like dirt bikes, not a big fan of them. It's not how I want to spend my time, but my husband loves doing that with our sons. I think it's, an unnecessary expense, but on the other hand, I want to, go get a facial, or I want to go get a massage, things that my husband just is like, why would you want to do that? It's just like a foreign concept to him. But we understand that we may not necessarily value it, but I can appreciate that that's something that he enjoys. And if we save for that, then by all means do that. So I think knowing yourselves and what you're willing to sacrifice and the things that you want to spend money on is really important.
Right. And then making room in your budget for it.
Yes.
So, when it comes down to a lot of your finances, are you mainly in charge of making sure that the money is met at the end of the month, or both of you guys on the same page with that?
I do all of our money. I do everything, but I talk to my husband so frequently about it probably makes him sick. But I do, and I do it very casually. I don't do it right when he's trying to like read something, like the newspaper or watch a show. It's just in casual conversation to say, hey, this is where we're at. This is how much is in our savings. These are some bills that we have. Some that, like, we had termites, so we had to like pay for that. So I'm like, okay, this one's kind of fallen off. This is handled. I also do if I keel over tomorrow, I say that to get his attention, to say, hey, this is important. Like, this is where all of our passwords are. This is how you access these things. So I'm real big on that, because I think, in the military, that's something that's the reality of our world. And it's the reality of everyone's world. But I think in the military, it's talked about a lot more.
Yes.
So I want him to know that if I die tomorrow, you have access to everything and you know where it's at. So you're definitely going to have to develop some muscle memory, but you know how to do it, and kind of that whole financial layout that I'm talking about. He's aware of that and knows where to find it. So my family won't have problems if I die.
Right. I think that's important for everyone, is to, I mean, at the very minimum, have the conversations of, this is where you can find everything. But what I also think is a good idea is to have a legacy binder. So, like, not just saying, here's the file cabinet everything is in, but actually having like a binder where all that important information is put. So any life insurance policies, any where your accounts are. Any other if you have a safe deposit box, where is that located? Where's the key? All of those sorts of sensitive details, so that if something really tragic happens, your partner knows where to go get that information.
Yeah, I'm that husband. She sat me down and said, okay, here is the plan if something happens. So she put out a 10-step plan. And ask me, do you know where everything is? Do you remember this? Do you remember that? So
that was the other thing. It's not just discussing where everything is, but, look, this is what, we do have a life insurance policy. This is how much it is. These are the things that you should probably do with that money that will put us you in the best position if I should pass.
Yeah, it's like a fire drill.
Exactly. It's just, unexpected tragedies happen all the time. They just do. That's the nature of being human beings. We just experienced that yesterday with one of our nieces. One of her best friends was killed in a head-on collision. And it's like, it just happens. Those things happen. And, for military families, they happen. And so have those conversations, put everything in a central location, in a safe location, because God forbid something does happen, and you don't want to put your family in a position to just not know what to do.
Right, too. And in the military, often, it's definitely not fun to talk about, but if you get a call or knock at your door that you definitely don't want to get, you oftentimes have to move quickly. And so if your spouse is injured in a foreign country, they're most likely going to bring you to Germany. So that was one thing that I'm always big on is, making sure that you have your important documents. So let's say your passport, your birth certificate, things like that you can grab quickly, that you're going to have to go to meet your spouse. Or also, unfortunately, too, if, your spouse is killed in service, that you're able to direct people how to help you. Say, okay, here is all of our things. So I think it's really important to have a clear picture of all of that stuff. And like you said, have that binder so you could just be like, here's everything.
And this is part of your training and your classes that you are preparing you're preparing them financially for, is to the long run. Because I know you spoke about your 80-year-old self, and if you get to that point, you have everything prepared. With that being said, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I hear the kids in the background.
Where's that train going, babe?
No, I hear the kids screaming in the background. Sorry. Just to go back a little bit. So you're still doing your training, right? Correct?
Yes, I do one-on-one coaching, and also too, sometimes I work under contracts for the Department of Defense, where I go in and give presentations and classes and do more like counseling and coaching for service members and their families, to teach them kind of everything about money, how to save it, how to budget, how to invest, how to prepare financially for hard times. And also too, like their life insurance, those type of things.
Okay. So is there any other added information that you give them for like their future goals? Because I know you just mentioned their TSP. What other information do you give them for their long-term investments or any, savings accounts?
One thing I'm real big on is that military spouses should be, if they're not working, contributing to an individual retirement account. I think that's really important. Often, the focus is on the service member because they're earning the income, they're giving money to the TSP or an IRA. But I think it's really important, even if they're not working, for them to be saving for their future, for their retirement, because you don't know what the future holds for you. And I hate to always be the bearer of bad news or the one that points out like what bad potential things could happen. But let's say, what if you get divorced?
Mm-hmm.
What happens if your spouse is killed in service? Yes, you're going to receive a lot of money, but you might not have signed up for the max amount of life insurance.
Mm-hmm.
They may not have put money into their retirement. And if you are killed in service, you're not going to get that retirement. So it's really important for the spouse to also be saving for their future, that 80-year-old self. Yeah. It's not just for the service member. It's each person should be saving for their 80-year-old self. If you are 16 years old and you start bagging groceries, you should start putting money away for your future self. So I think teaching the whole family that it's really important to keep the future in mind when it comes to money.
Well, Lacey, I don't know where the time went, but we're almost out of time. And so before we get into the very final questions, I just did want to hit one final thing. And we talked about the TSP, we talked about BH and other retirement benefits available to military service people. Are there any other financial benefits available specifically to the military that they want to consider?
When you deploy, don't forget about the savings deposit program. It's something where you can put money into a savings account and you earn 10% over the year, which is pretty good for a savings account. I always tell people, like, if you're not sure what to do, at least do that. If you deploy, you can't do it till you've been in what they call in theater or in country for 30 days, but it's a great way to save money at a good rate of return. Also, to use all of the services. It's so important. There are so many things available to service members that can not only help them save money, but make money. And they should use them because they're free. So if they're giving out free Christmas trees on your installation, go get a free Christmas tree instead of paying for one. It sounds very simple, but where you can keep your costs low, you should. You can get your taxes done for free on an installation. You get your taxes discounted through like TurboTax for being military. Use every bit of the resources that you can. And don't forget to get financial help. There are free financial counselors on most every installation. And if you can't find one on your installation, you can find them online through Military One Source is a great resource for the Department of Defense. And they will find one in your local area, or they'll have somebody help you online. So using those resources to help your long-term financial gain, I think is really important, especially because they're right there.
Yeah, I think that's just generally, don't wait till you need that. Like that's just something you should do no matter what. You should do that just so that you can, make sure, number one, that you're aware of all of the resources available to you, but two, so that you can, create a plan for your future. Even at 17 or 18 years old, just sitting down with someone and laying everything out and saying, okay, well, this is what you have coming in, but these are also the things that you can do to set yourself up to be in this position that you want to be in when you're 40, you're 50 later on down the line.
Right. I have one more thing I think is so important people don't do is every installation gives a tour to new service members and their families. And oftentimes people don't go to them, but it's valuable intel because they're pointing out where all these resources are to say, hey, here's where you can go get your taxes done for free. Here's the employment office to help you find a job for the military spouse and for military children. Here's also a lot of times military installations have what they call a lending closet to say, okay, hey, right now you don't have a couch, you can borrow one, or here you don't have pots and pans, you can borrow them. Or even one installation we were at, they had a place where you could borrow dresses. So the military, you go to a lot of formals and you don't want to buy a brand new formal dress every time. And they even rented wedding dresses.
Wow.
And so it's using those things that can actually save you money. So doing that post or base tour, I think is really important because they're going to tell you where all the good stuff's at.
Excellent. I love it.
Yes. They need to have a financial mandatory boot camp.
Yes. Well, they do. They have one when you come in, when you get to your first duty station, you also have to have financial training. And then when there's new things like the new military retirement system, they give mandatory training for it. So it's there. But if you are in between or miss something, you can always go to the financial readiness or financial services offices on your installation. And they have classes on home buying, car buying, saving for big ticket items, getting out of debt, budgeting. So there is a plethora of financial help.
That's awesome.
Excellent. Well, Lacey, so much good stuff. So much good. It's been such a fun time talking to you. We do have just a few more final questions that we ask every guest on our show, if you are ready.
I'm ready.
What was one lesson that you learned about money or finances, good or bad, growing up that you have carried over into your financial journey? And you may have already talked about this, but we'll see.
The biggest one is debt takes away your freedom. That I think is something that always resonated with me. And I've seen it true in my own life when I did go into some debt, like, oh man, it doesn't feel good. And it made it so I was beholden, like I couldn't take opportunity. So it's definitely, I see it now too. And the coaching that I do and helping others is that debt really takes away opportunities.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. There's so many times where we have wanted to do something, but we can't because we have all this debt. So it's exciting to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. For our second question, what is one money lesson you want to pass down to your children or your loved ones?
The biggest one is that you have to spend less than you make, but you have to invest that money. Not just put it under the mattress, that you want to be using your 401k, your TSP, an IRA, mutual funds, index funds to help grow your financial future. So I think that's really important that I want to teach my children is to spend less than you make, but also to invest your money.
And Lacey, do you have a favorite read? And if so, why is it your favorite?
I really love the book Take the Stairs by Rory Vaden. My dad actually gave me this book. Have you ever read it?
No, I've never heard of it.
It's an older book. I don't actually have any idea when it came out. But there's one story in there that I just loved. And the whole book is about motivation and organizing your life and planning, but won't spoil it. This story in the book that really I loved, but it was about sometimes in life, you just have to do things scared. And I think that's so true in everything, and about in money and entrepreneurship and parenting and being a spouse, being married, that sometimes, you know, you're going to have to kind of put your foot out there and take that step, even though you're worried about it or you're scared about it. And that story has kind of stayed with me, and it's always kind of a kick in the pants for me when I want to go outside of my comfort zone, but I'm really scared to go outside of my comfort zone to say, hey, I'll learn, I'll develop muscle memory, and I'll get better at this. I'm scared right now, but it's going to get better.
That's awesome.
That's a hard lesson to learn, is that, you know, fear is okay. You know, it's totally okay. And it's okay. And I love what you just said about doing it while you're scared. Like being scared is not going to pass.
Right.
I mean, it's not going to, you know, don't wait for it to end before you make those moves. Like make them while you're scared, and then it will dissipate. But to do it while you're scared.
Yes. And that is, to give him full credit, that is where I got that from. He says in the book that sometimes you just have to do it scared. And you think about that, like public speaking, definitely doing it scared. Like that first 10 seconds is just like your voice is jittery and you know, your heart's racing. And that's sometimes too about money. People are so fearful of it. Yeah. They haven't been raised that way, and they feel like they're not good at it, when 99% of the time, there's nothing wrong with anybody. Like, you're doing a great job. You just kind of got to make some tweaks and improvements to get better at it. So when you're fearful of money, you kind of got to just do it scared.
Yes. What is the best way for people to find you?
LaceyLangford.com. That's my website. There you can find information about me, posts about money in the military. Also my podcast, The Military Money Show, is on there. So it's Lacey with an E though.
Well, Lacey, and your podcast has some just really great guests on it. I know I took a perusal and I've listened, and always good stuff and always great conversations. And so for all of our military friends and family out there, and anybody in general, I think that yours is a great one to add to their list of must listens.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that.
That was a really great show, babe.
Yes, Lacey gave a lot of information that I can use in my classroom, as well as anybody that we know that are in the military.
Well, not just that, like young people. I'm thinking about Michael and the things that I want to sit down and talk with him about now, and so that he can, make better decisions, not better decisions, but just use that in his decision making about what he wants to do next.
Yes, that's the biggest point that I took from that, was making sure that he had a direct career path and not be stuck in limbo if he does enlist.
Right. And so we did talk with Lacey a little bit off the recording, and one of the tips that she gave was for young people who are looking into going into the military was to secure their job duties before they actually sign up. And she said that scoring high on the ASVAB is one of those things that gives them career choices. So if you have a young person who is pretty much decided that that's what they want to do, that they should really study for the ASVAB so they get a higher score, so that they get better job opportunities when they actually join, which I think was a really great tip. So there was a lot of really awesome benefits that we talked about in the show today. So what we're going to do is we're going to recap all of those in the show notes. There are so many just really great resources available to our service members. And so just be sure that you are taking full advantage of those resources. And then if you are in a situation where, maybe your finances aren't where they need to be, just know that you have resources available to you as service members that can help you get on track. People like Lacey who are there to serve as counselors. And I think that that's just a great thing to do for anyone in the military, is to sit down with a counselor and just, get a clear path for your future and, plan for your 80-year-old self, because, God willing, you will be 80. So you better plan for it. All right, everyone. So right now, Plutus nominations are open. And if you do not know what the Plutus Foundation and the Plutus Awards are, they are basically huge supporters of the financial space. The Plutus Awards are one way for people in the financial space to get recognized for their contributions to our communities. And so every year they have nominations for different categories, and we would love to be nominated. It would be something that would bring a spotlight to our show so that we can help more people. So we would love it if you would put us into the hat for a nomination for Best New Podcast. And we will put a link for that directly in our show notes so that you can help support our show and get us out there to more people so that we can help more people. The Plutus Foundation itself, they're just a really awesome group of people that are not just out there spotlighting information, but actually helping worthy causes to help with financial education. So we'll link that in there as well. You can support them. You can support the individuals and organizations that they sponsor as well. It's just a really great organization.
Are you connected yet? Well, if you're not, we have our Facebook group. If you want to go to the website and get connected to the House of Five Facebook group, all you have to do is click on the link at the top of the page and get connected to our community. We love for you to be a part of our house.
You can also find us on Facebook with a search of House of Five Financial Independence for Families. We'll pop up. You'll find us. All right, everyone. Well, we look forward to having you back at our house on Friday. Friday is going to be a bonus episode for Father's Day.
Is that coming up already?
It's coming up really, really quick.
Is it Friday or...
No, it's Sunday.
Oh, it's Sunday.
Our show is Friday.
Okay.
You got it?
Yes, I got it. It's Father's Day on Sunday. So to all you daddies out there, get breakfast in bed.
Do you want breakfast in bed?
No, I don't want breakfast in bed.
You just want us to let you sleep, right?
Yes, let me sleep.
And vacuum.
Yeah, I'm going to have to vacuum today and Friday.
No,
probably every day.
We will vacuum for you.
Oh, no. I'll do it.
You're ridiculous. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you have an excellent week, and we will see you back here on Friday.
Thank you for listening. We were glad you were here.